The CEO lay perfectly still on the cold leather couch in his office, his breathing slow and measured, his eyes shut just enough to fool anyone who walked in. But he wasn't asleep. He was waiting, listening, watching for something he hadn't been able to find in years. Something real. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of doing the right thing even when no one is watching, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Stories. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. It was late afternoon, and sunlight spilled to the tall glass windows of the towering corporate building, casting long golden streaks across the polished floors. Most employees had already left, their hurried footsteps fading into silence. The office was quiet now, almost too quiet, except for the distant hum of cleaning equipment. Down the hallway, moving slowly but with purpose, was a man named Horace. He wore a faded uniform, slightly too big for his lean frame, and his worn-out shoes squeaked faintly against the marble floor. To most people in the building, he was invisible, just a janitor, just another worker who cleaned up after everyone else's mess. But Horace carried more than a mop and a bucket. He carried the weight of being both father and mother to his 7-year-old daughter, Meher. Every morning, he woke up before sunrise, prepared her breakfast, braided her hair the best he could with clumsy fingers, and walked her to school before rushing to his shift. Every night, he returned home exhausted, yet still found the strength to help her with homework, tell her stories, and tuck her in with a promise that tomorrow would be better. But tomorrow had been stubbornly difficult. Bills piled up, rent was overdue. Meher's school had sent a notice about unpaid fees. And just 2 days ago, Horace had received a warning from his landlord. One more delay, and they would have nowhere to go. Still, he kept going. That evening, as he reached the CEO's office, he hesitated. This was the most luxurious room in the entire building. Everything inside it spoke of power, dark wood furniture, expensive art, and a view that stretched across the entire city. Horace rarely entered this room, and when he did, he worked quickly, quietly, making sure not to disturb anything. He gently pushed the door open. There, on the couch, lay the CEO, Armanzad, apparently asleep. Horace froze. For a moment, he considered leaving. Cleaning could wait. Disturbing the CEO was not worth the risk. But then he glanced at his watch. He couldn't afford to fall behind. Every extra minute meant getting home later, and Meher would be waiting. So he stepped inside, quietly closing the door behind him. He began working carefully, wiping surfaces, emptying the trash, making sure every corner was spotless. His movements were soft, almost invisible, but as he worked, something caught his eye. On the desk, near the edge, sat a glass of water, half full, and a bottle of expensive medication. The label wasn't something he recognized, but the number of pills left was dangerously low. He paused. Then he looked at the sleeping CEO. Horace didn't know much about corporate life, but he knew exhaustion when he saw it. The man's face, even in stillness, looked strained. Lines of stress carved into his forehead. His hand rested awkwardly against his chest, as if even in rest, something was not right. Horace stood there for a moment, conflicted. This wasn't his place. But something inside him, the same instinct that made him wake up early for his daughter, that made him sacrifice meals so she could eat, wouldn't let him ignore it. He quietly walked over to the desk, picked up the glass, and replaced the water with fresh, cool water from the dispenser outside. Then, he arranged medication neatly, ensuring it was within easy reach. After that, he gently adjusted the blinds, allowing softer light into the room. He didn't stop there. Noticing a blanket folded on a chair, he carefully picked it up and, with the gentlest motion, draped it over the CEO's body. It was a simple act, small, almost invisible, but it was full of something rare, genuine care without expectation. Then, as quietly as he had entered, Horace returned to his work, finishing the cleaning with even more care than usual. Before leaving, he glanced back once more, making sure everything looked peaceful. And then he left. The door clicked softly behind him. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then Armanzad opened his eyes. He didn't move immediately. He just lay there, staring at the ceiling, his chest rising and falling a little faster now. Something inside him had shifted, something he hadn't felt in years. He had pretended to sleep because he didn't trust anyone anymore. Years of corporate battles, betrayals, and selfish ambition had taught him that kindness often came with a price. People helped when they wanted something in return. But what he had just witnessed was different. That man, Horace, had no idea he was being watched. There was no audience, no reward, no recognition. And yet, he chose kindness. The next morning, the entire office buzzed with whispers. Something unusual was happening. Employees were being called into meetings. Files were being reviewed, and rumors spread like wildfire. Horace, unaware of everything, went about his duties as usual. He had more important things on his mind, like how he was going to explain to Meher if they had to leave their home. Then, around noon, something unexpected happened. He was called to the CEO's office. His heart sank. Had he done something wrong? Was he being fired? With trembling hands, he knocked on the door. "Come in." The voice was calm, steady. Horace stepped inside, his eyes lowered. Armin Zaid stood near the window, looking out at the city. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he turned, and what he said next would change everything. Without anger, without accusation, he simply thanked him. Horace looked up, confused. The CEO walked closer, his expression softer than anyone in the company had ever seen. He spoke about what he had seen the previous evening, not as a test, but as a revelation. He spoke about how rare it was to find someone who did the right thing when no one was watching. Then he asked Horace about his life. And for the first time in a long time, someone listened, really listened. By the end of that conversation, Horace walked out of the office not as just a janitor, but as someone whose life was about to change. The company arranged support for his daughter's education. His position was upgraded, giving him better pay and stable hours. And most importantly, he was treated with respect, not because of his job, but because of his heart. If this story has touched you even a little, take a moment to comment, and share your thoughts. Stories like this remind us that even the smallest act of kindness can echo louder than we ever imagine. And here's a special request. Comment below the word kindness if you believe that doing good, even in silence, still matters in this world. Because somewhere, someone might be watching not to judge, but to believe again. And sometimes, all it takes is one quiet act to change everything.